Good afternoon, everybody. As always, my name is JC, and welcome to my channel, Everyman's Thoughts. Spoiler warning, in today's video, I'm going to break down Season 1, Episode 4 of Amazon's Rings of Power, so you've been warned. With that, let's get started. We start Episode 4 with Queen Tarmiriel having a vision. The sea is crashing over the mountains to swallow and destroy the capital city of Armenelos. This is, of course, a direct reference to the punishment of the Valar from the books. For those that don't know, the Valar are gods, and they punished the Numenorians for abandoning them and then directly disobeying them. The punishment was sinking their island back into the sea. The island itself was a gift from the Valar for the humans remaining faithful during the War of Wrath and helping to defeat Morgoth. However, in the show, they appear to have made some changes. It appears as if the writers have made it so that the humans are about to be punished for forsaking their relationship with the elves instead of disobeying the gods. As with so many decisions they've made before, this change makes no sense to me and actually causes problems. Earlier, Galadriel implied the island was a gift from the elves to the humans for their loyalty to the elves. Moreover, the casual viewer is being led to assume that this island nation is being destroyed because it no longer has a relationship with the elves. So if the elves are this powerful, why would they need any help in defeating Sauron? This kind of destroys the next, 7,000 years of storytelling from Tolkien's books. However, there's nothing we can do about it, so it is what it is. Let's put that behind us and just accept that it's the relationship between men and elves that is of concern. This transitions nicely into our next scene. We next come upon an Anti-Elph Rally, which Pharazôn deftly diffuses with his wit and oratory skills. It's a quick scene, but there are a few things of note. First, we see how much respect Pharazôn has amongst his people and his skill as a politician. Second, if elves are going to be surrogates for the Valar like we just discussed, then from the books you'd think that Pharazôn would be fanning the flames, not quenching the fires. Although I am frustrated with the unnecessary changes from the books, this does give me hope they're going to develop the storyline over multiple seasons, and there's some evidence for that later in the episode. Anyway, I digress. Amidst all of this anti-elf sentiment, the Queen gives Galadriel an audience so that they may plan a path forward. We know from the previous episode that the Queen is very sympathetic to the elf cause. However, she's also a smart, level-headed woman. She's seen nothing from Galadriel but arrogance and impetuousness. Thus, the Queen is wise enough to know Galadriel is a bad gamble and not worth the risk to make her the bridge to re-establish relationships with the elves. Because Galadriel is the main character, we're obviously supposed to be sympathetic to her point of view, but imagine things from the Queen's perspective. Galadriel claims Halbrand is some long-lost king, but has nothing close to even remotely convincing evidence. She also wants the Queen to put her credibility on the line and muster an army to go stop a war that Galadriel could not possibly know is happening. All this based on the word of a woman who, despite being thousands of years old, has no gravitas about her and stamps her feet like a spoiled child. It's not just bad writing, but it's also an easy decision, and the Queen stays true to her wise character and says no. Also true to her character, Galadriel cannot accept that someone else may have concerns other than what she just said, so she oversteps and gets thrown in jail for her troubles. Later in the episode, when the story catches up with Galadriel, she's still in her cell, but she's had an opportunity to discuss her circumstances with Halbrand. I found this scene perplexing, as it's either going to be yet another mediocre scene in a show that's been remarkably mediocre so far, or if the writers truly are trying to develop something deeper, this could be a benchmark scene. Something that we point back to and say, remember when this happened? Let me explain. When Halbrand begins to break down the situation, Galadriel shows a willingness, if not eagerness, to listen. Furthermore, he has incredible insight despite the fact he didn't even witness half of the events he's analyzing. Is this perhaps an early clue that there's considerably more to this character than what we've seen so far? I'm certainly not the only person out there that thinks Halbrand is the most likely character to become Sauron. Even more than his conversation with Galadriel, I'm taking notice of Halbrand's conversation with Pharazôn. When Pharazôn is contemplating whether or not to intervene to try and stop Galadriel, Halbrand tells him he doesn't need to bother if he knows where she's going. Now, if this is the mediocre writing we've become accustomed to, then this is simply Halbrand telling Pharazôn where she's going, and that's why Galadriel has a garrison of guards waiting for her at the King's Tower. However, if this is something better, at some point down the line we may see an extended version of this conversation where Halbrand uses this as an opportunity to ingratiate himself to Pharazôn, perhaps even laying the groundwork for a plot to manipulate the Queen. I wish I could say I thought this was the direction they were going, but honestly, I'm not holding my breath. So Galadriel beats up the Numenorian guards in a fight sequence so pathetic they didn't even bother having choreography, and escapes to the King's Tower. Upon entering the tower, Galadriel sees that the king is king in name only and is at death's doorstep. And again, I see another opportunity to improve the show here. In the books, Pharazôn marries Miriel and takes her throne. I assume that the show decided to leave Miriel in charge to meet Amazon's stringent requirements regarding the depiction of female characters. However, with her father still alive yet about to die, we have the obvious opportunity to make things right. The king dies, Pharazôn marries Miriel, and steals the throne the way the books intended. Anyway, as the scene wears on, Miriel explains to Galadriel just how precarious the political situation is. Galadriel then uses the Palantir and has the same vision that Miriel had to open the episode. Given the delicate political situation, the Queen decides to expel Galadriel, but then changes her mind when she sees the falling leaves of the White Tree. The falling leaves were in all of her doomsday visions, and it's recognized as a bad portent. Beyond not expelling Galadriel, the Queen orders the creation of an expeditionary force to go aid in a war that they have absolutely no proof exists. As I look back on the Galadriel and Numenor story for episode 4, I notice I mentioned that there were scenes that gave me hope on several different occasions, but the truth is I'm more disheartened now than I ever have been at any point in the series. It's obvious now they made the change of the Numenorians being committed to the elves instead of the Valar as a contrivance so they could inject badly written, shallow, one-dimensional symbolism for nationalist or populist rhetoric. They made their change with Miriel so they could meet their quota for strong female leads. So even if they take every opportunity I mentioned earlier to improve the show or get right with the books, it's likely they're going to be so committed to their political narrative that it won't affect the change that I'm hoping for. And even if they were willing to alter course, it still wouldn't change the fact that the writing is subpar and the dialogue is absolutely cringe.
There is a tempest in me. It swept me to this island for a reason, and it will not be quelled by you, Regent.
With dialogue like that, you begin to appreciate Arondir's stoic nature, so it will do him next that we might cleanse our palates. Arondir has been recaptured, his friends have been slaughtered, and he's now being presented to the leader of the orcs. This sets up the big reveal that Adar is a corrupted elf, and the orcs refer to him as Father. Prior to the show's premiere, when there was a virtual complete information blackout, there were some rumors that they were going to explore the origins of the orcs, and we'll see if that's where they go with the whole father thing. Also, let's not overlook the fact that we now know elves can be corrupted. It begs the question, does the elf have to be a willing participant in his own corruption, or is it something that can be forced upon him? Some have also speculated that Adar is just one of Sauron's other names, and I can tell you right now there's no way Adar and Sauron are going to be the same person. In any case, after a befuddlingly enigmatic conversation, which is undoubtedly another cheap contrivance to set up a reveal down the line, Adar strikes an agreement with Arondir. He will allow him to leave as long as he delivers a message. The people in the watchtower have to forego all of their claims on the land, and if they stay, they have to swear fealty. This agreement will be complicated, if not completely abrogated, when Adar finds out the relic he's looking for is in the aforementioned tower.
Your father. We found it. It's in the tower.
The relic itself appears to be the hilt end of a broken sword, presumably left in the area by some powerful evil during the War of Wrath or shortly thereafter. Remember that on multiple occasions they've referenced the fact that the people in this area fought on the side of Morgoth and Sauron in the war. For me, there were 3 noteworthy points regarding the relic. First, when it got a taste of Theo's blood, it had the power to reform itself.
Get that.
Second, the orcs made such a big deal of locating the hilt, one might infer it was the primary reason for them razing all the local villages. And last, Uncle Touchy here admits he's been hiding the relic in his barn. The relic isn't so much a sword as it is a powerful weapon forged by Sauron himself, and that the meteor we saw fall from the sky was the hallmark of Sauron's return. Like so many other scenes, the conversation between Theo and Uncle Bad Touch advances an interesting subplot ever so slightly before abruptly ending just to set up a cheap cliffhanger. Couple of thoughts before we move on. I keep getting this bad feeling that they're going to rip off Lord of the Rings again, and the sword is going to take place of the ring and be the thing that Sauron needs to reform. And finally, Uncle Pull My Finger had a similar scar on his forearm, so we know he's wielded the sword previously as well. Yet, if he is a human as he appears, he could not possibly have fought in the War of Wrath. So maybe there's something else going on there as well. So now we move on to the dwarves, which actually starts with Elrond and Celebrimbor in Eregion. If you're paying close attention, you're probably just as confused as I was. The scene opens with Elrond marveling at Celebrimbor's tower and commenting about how the dwarves and elves have been working together. And in the background, there's this massive structure already well underway. Because of the other storylines, we have a pretty good idea how much time has passed, which isn't much, yet Elrond has bounced back and forth between Moria, Eregion, and Lindon who knows how many times. Beyond that, dwarven workers who would have had to have traveled from Moria all the way to Eregion have already made serious progress on this behemoth project. Meanwhile, Galadriel's been in Numenor, 2 days? This is very reminiscent of Season 8 of Game of Thrones, and we all know how that went. Putting the disjointed timeline behind us, there were some high points with the dwarves that I'd like to reflect on. Celebrimbor mentions to Elrond that he thinks Durin is hiding something from him, which leads to Elrond discovering that the dwarves have been mining this new ore called mithril. Speculation has been around for a long time that the desire to harvest the mithril will lead the dwarves to mine too greedily and too deep and come across the Balrog. In the background of this, we had a few scenes that gave us some decent fan service and referenced Tolkien's actual writings. Tolkien wrote, for lack of a better word, about the spiritual relationship between the dwarves and the mountain or the rocks. In one scene, we see Durin IV make Elrond swear upon the mountain, saying that dwarven anger even outlives elven memory. In another, we see Disa singing to the mountain, asking it to release the trapped miners while they're still alive. If they had this much respect for Tolkien's writings throughout other aspects of the show, it might not be the middling series that it is. As I look back at episode 4, we're halfway through the first season, and I am perplexed as to how little story we've actually revealed. At every turn, expositions regarding some subplot or another are ended abruptly to set up some form of cliffhanger or bait the viewer. This is the cheapest form of writing tricks and well below par for a series of this caliber. I'll probably do a separate video on my thoughts of season 1 thus far at the halfway point, so if you are interested, please hit that subscribe button. And that's it for me this time, guys. I will see you next time.